Hello, today I'm going to review the Mewtwo figure from Jazzwares in the Pokemon Select line. Starting out with the overall look of this figure, he's a lot bigger than I thought he would be. These things are about 8 inches, 8 inches I think is about right on these characters, and I did not expect for them to be this big. Although I do think that's a welcome surprise because I think a bigger figure is better than a smaller one, especially with an articulated figure that you want to have lots of motion. And the tail, as you can see, doesn't look like it has any joints, but we'll get into that later. That actually has a lot of articulation. But I think next we will get into the articulation on this figure. Starting out with the head, you can see there's articulation there. And you would think that that would be limited by his little tube in the back, but that's like a soft rubber piece, so you can actually still bend it around and up and down and all that. And another thing, which I'm not going to do in this video, but it is a feature, is that you can actually just pull the tube out, bend his head where you want to bend it to, then put it back in, and it will stay in place. So that's a very nice feature. His head also moves up and down, as you can see from this up and down joint. Although the tube is kind of stopping it right now. I don't want to damage the rubbery pieces though, so I'm not going to be bending them around too much. He has articulation up around the chest area. That's kind of side to side and up and down just a little bit. Then around the waist area, there's like a ball joint that kind of moves everywhere. Very good articulation. Then of course there's articulation in the shoulders, in the elbows with a two-jointed joint right there. And kind of like a little stopper in the middle so you don't bend it the wrong way. There's a joint up here in the hand, and even finger articulation, which I think is really rare to see on a figure. Same thing goes for the other arm, of course. As we move on down, he has articulation in a bunch of places in his legs. You can actually kind of bend his legs inwards too, but these are mostly meant just to be moved up and down, like a kick almost, like a kangaroo leg. And he has articulation up here in kind of the top of his thigh, down here around the ankle, and even on the toes right here, so you can get all kinds of cool poses out of that. And then the tail, which I haven't been around any, but I know it's there. It has like a wire going through it where you can bend the tail in any way you want. The reason I'm not going to bend the wire around for the video is because I don't really want to do any damage to the wire, which I don't think it would, but I kind of like to keep my figures in mint condition, so I try to bend them least as possible. I guess that's not really what you're supposed to do with action figures, but that's what I do. But anyway, now we'll get on more to his details. So up in his eyes, you can see they got some printing there where he has his eyes and like the purple inside of them. This figure doesn't need all this much printing because I mean in the game he's kind of got a plain design other than kind of the shades of purple going down him. They did print around kind of his waist right here that goes down and under and then back around. And of course the tail is kind of that darker purple blue color. And that's really all the printing that this figure has, which I mean he didn't really need anything else. I will say he has like some little nose holes right there, so that's cool. And he doesn't really have much of a mouth, but then again he doesn't really have a mouth in the game. I know he does speak in Detective Pikachu though, and it looks like he has a mouth in that, so I don't know. I guess it's just different iterations of him. This kind of looks more like the Pokemon Go Mewtwo, I think, than the one from more of the mainline games. Well, it kind of almost looks like a mix of all of them. Also kind of reminds me of the movie Mewtwo, just because this one looks more muscular than the other ones. But now I think we'll get into kind of like some poses that you can put him in, and I need to show how the stand works on this figure because it confused me at first. I will say though, this figure stands fine without a stand, especially with the tail on the back, so you can get him standing on those little toes, and it's kind of cool looking like that. But now we'll get into the stand. This is the same as the other stands with like bendable little points of articulation in there with a little pin that goes in. And if you had this figure and you're like me, I tried inserting the pin straight in there because I thought that would work like that, and you know it will never go in there. Turns out you had to put it in sideways because the pin is meant to go in sideways beside the tail, and it's really hard to get in, but once you get it in it does stay. So I'm gonna try to put him back on the stand now, but I'm gonna do that off camera. For those wondering, it goes in at exactly this angle right here. So if you put the pin in like that, that should hold him up perfectly and you don't have to worry about him falling. But now I'm going to try to put him in a pose for like one of the cards or something and just leave him in that for the thumbnail or something. So I'm going to do that now. Well, here's my attempt at getting him into a pose like he has in the games, where he has his hand out, getting ready to use his powers. And I try putting his other hand into a fist like he'd normally have it, but that's kind of hard to do on this figure. But you can bend the fingers inwards, so I think that looks pretty good. I also bent the tail around to kind of show how the wire works. And I also bent the head a little bit. And I'm very, very happy with the articulation on this figure. I'm so happy that we're finally getting Pokemon figures that have tons of articulation, kind of like those Star Wars figures that I always review on this channel. And I'll definitely try to catch them all, any of the figures that I like at least. But anyway, I think this is a perfect figure, and the price point for these is way better than those Star Wars figures. So yeah, this is the best Pokemon figure I've ever had, and I hope that they can continue with this quality, because this is a very high quality figure for a very low price point. And I especially like that they include stands with these, because there's nothing more frustrating than trying to put a figure in a cool pose and then realizing that it can't stand and just kind of having to sacrifice the poses. But with these, you can just have him floating up in the air and have him using his telekinetic powers or whatever in the air on this stand, and it just looks cool on display. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.